Real Gaming coming at y'all with another video. And in today's video, I wanted to go over the Digimon Company's banned and restricted card announcements and what they actually have on the official site for the game. And I guess trying to go over their reasonings of why some of the cards were hit on our ban list. But as you can see in the background here, before I get into it, if you guys hear anything, I haven't posted a lot of videos lately because I've had some issues going on with my house getting reworked on. So if you hear anything, my roof is actually getting redone right now. But I'll probably try to decorate or something a little bit different in the background here. But I have switched rooms and I'm working on it. That's why I haven't had as much content this week. But anyways, let's get into the video with that out of the way. We know all the cards that are banned and restricted. I've already talked about them before, and we went over them and kind of gave you my feelings overall. Like I said, to restate, I am, 80% happy with the ban list. I was happy with how many cards I put on there. I think maybe one or two more cards could have been added, and maybe one of the cards could have been switched off, that being the Digimon. And I would have liked to seen the Galaxy Tamer on the list and then the Imperial Tamer on the list. But regardless, I think overall they did a good job. Passing grade, I'll give them an A if I had to give them an A, like a wording grade. But let's go into this. Matt is banned. You cannot include this card in any of your decks. And this is their reasoning. By combining this card with a small number of Dustmon, Velgramon, insert Digimon here, essentially, you can make great use of cards from your trash. Since this move can be performed simply by placing a single one of these cards in the battle area or trash, we decided that a one card limit would be more difficult to counter. It will be banned for the reasons mentioned above. I do agree with their reasoning here. I do think that they did a really good job with this reasoning because even if the mat is at 1, it doesn't keep the purple hybrid deck from being able to take that one mat and turn it into multiple other copies of, being able to play him out, get out other cards from your trash, back to your hand, and just seeing the mat, I think that, a lot of these old tamers we're seeing now, they made them really generic and strong, and even though that, there was a time period a lot of these old tamers maybe didn't have some time to shine, but with their effects being so generic, now with all these awesome targets they have, you can see now how they start to be a problem in the game. I'm okay with this. I do think it makes where purple decks have to be a little more creative with cards that they put in their deck to be able to get them back. And I do think that Matt was a good hit. I'd rather have had the Velgramon hit, but in that case, Matt has been a problem for them trying to balance in the card game in general. So good reasonings here. Happy with the Matt hit. And then now we're getting into our restricted cards. Matt was the only card they banned. I think that that's fair enough. I didn't think any card would get banned outright, but I did know that hopefully a lot would get limited to 1. But moving on to the BT4 Jack Raid, their reasoning is that since this card was designed, the speed at which the number of cards in your trash can be accumulated has also increased. So they're just saying here, when this card was made, from since then, the number of cards that you can put into your trash with purple decks has increased a lot, which it definitely has, right? Making it easier to secure a large amount of memory with just this one card. And that is definitely the case. If you take anything outside of this, just this card alone and your trash being so full, really leads you to gain a lot of memory. And with that being said, they're not touching on, I haven't read the rest, but so far they haven't touched on that. This card can also be loot with Matt and other cards, so that is part of the issue as well. Continuing on with their statement, the result is that it has accelerated the game speed more than anticipated. This limits the design options for future purple decks, so for that reason, we will be restricting it to only one copy. There's a lot of ways to abuse Jack Raid, and Matt is a big one of that, being able to get Jack Raid back, and a lot of other purple cards that let you get back options. So I do think that hitting the Jack Raid is a good call, and I think that they're seeing a lot of these memory cards they made back in the day to kind of help you speed up the game. Now that the game has been sped up with the Digimon effects that we get that are really, really good, now, being able to get memory on top of that for free is, it's not that good for the game. Like, it's just getting too crazy, and I think that this will help slow down purple decks that were abusing it. Now, I know that this is another one. The BT17 Fenrir Lugamon is hit to 1. And like I stated before, I think it either needed to be this card or the egg. And I think ultimately, after, listen to the community, I do think that this Fenrir Lugamon was the right choice to hit. And I think a lot of people are happy about that because this is the card that slaps your memory back to 3, which is, the issue in the deck. Whereas, like, the egg, yes, you wouldn't be able to do a lot of the other shenanigans. But the issue with this Fenrir Lugamon being able to slap your memory back to 3 is why it is such a problem. And even with the egg being switched, they would still be able to do that play, which is the biggest hurt for the deck, I think. So I do agree with this hit for the deck, but their reasoning is, in the Fenrir Lugamon Takamikazuchi deck, this card allows you to play Kazuchimon without paying the cost, which is OP, which is necessary for the DNA Digivolution of BT17 Fenrir Lugamon Takamikazuchi. Since the role of this single card is overwhelming, we've determined that the one-shot performance of this card will discourage players from using other aggressive decks and reduce the diversity of decks in the game. For that reason, we will be restricting it to 1. So let's go over that again. Since the role of this card is overwhelming, we determined that the one-shot performance of this card will discourage players from using other aggressive decks and reduce the diversity of decks in the game. So they're saying that this here alone, this Fenrir Lugamon, is keeping a lot of other aggressive decks and the diversity of the card game out because it's so strong. And I guess they're trying to say if they don't hit this, it doesn't let them be able to make other cards that people would want to buy, which their company, right? They want you to buy the new cards. And those cards wouldn't have a way to compete with the Fenrir Lugamon. And I do think that this card really is just super powerful. And I do think that it's a great hit. And I do like their reasoning. I think one thing I don't like is that they're not touching on like the OTK potential and the value from the card. Which I don't think that the Digimon company, as much as like players don't like getting OTK'd, I don't think that the Digimon company has an issue with OTK decks being around. I think they just have an issue with like how healthy they are for their game and cards that they want to make, and if they stay too strong for too long or issues like that where other cards don't get played. That I will say the Digimon company, I forget the lead developer's name, but he does a good job of letting Digimon have a very diverse state of the game, which is, I do like the use of his words here with the diversity of the decks in the game, which I think is a big point that a lot of focus is on with the card game. And I do think that the Fenrir Lugamon is a good hit, and I don't mind the wording here. I just wish that they would touch up on us on like what OTK decks are okay, right? And then which ones are not, because there are some that have been able to be in the game for a while and others where they're like, well, maybe not. So I would like that to be a little more cleared up by Digimon, in my opinion. Going through the list, we do have the BT4 Blinding Ray, another memory gaining card. This was mainly used in Magnamon X Anybody decks and stuff like that. You can use it in a lot of yellow decks to be in general just to gain the memory and proc your when cards are trashed from your security effects. I do think that this was the most free way that Magnamon was able to proc their protection, right? Which to me was the issue with that. Hopefully they say something about that too. I doubt that they do though, because they're just worried about the speed of the game and what these memory things usually let people do. But I think that this is a hit towards Magnamon X Anybody, but also other yellow decks that, would use this card. That being said, Magnamon's not going anywhere. It's definitely a really strong deck still without this Blinding Raid, because you don't really need it. You just have to, this just made you had to be like getting your effect for free without having to take the risk of swinging into their security and maybe their Digimon being bigger to block you and stuff like that. But let's continue on. Their reasoning for the Blinding Raid is that since the time this card was designed, there are now more cards that can complete combos by trashing security. True. Making it easier to trigger those conditions and gain a larger amount of memory with just this card. Also true. Also, its zero clause allows it to be used at any time, greatly expanding actionable options and improving the player's ability to turn the game around at a greater rate. For that reason, we will be restricting it to only one copy. I agree with everything they said here. This one was pretty clear. A plus 100 on the explanation for this one. I think that covers a lot of things. They're touching on how the game has changed, how the game is faster, and how that this card really comes with no downside in yellow decks. And it costing 0 also, you don't even have to have your Magnamon out. Like, I just keep taking Magnamon because it's definitely the biggest abuser that we have in the card game at the moment that was using this. And this card being able to get used, say you're not into your Magnamon yet, you could still get that 2 memory by trashing your target security, and now maybe you get into the Magnamon faster. So not only is it a win more button, it helps you get back into the game. So this was a good hit putting this card down to 1. This is one I am excited to go over only because I've been calling for these promos to get hit for a while now. And any channels that I talk in or groups that I talk to, everyone told me I was crazy for these cards. And if there's one I could be really happy about and a little smug, is definitely that these got hit, because I think that they needed to be out of the game a while ago. But regardless of that, I'm just trying to educate you guys and, let everyone know. For anyone who hasn't seen this, this is on the Digimon Card, world.digimoncard.dev site. So you can go to this and, look this up yourself. But I'm just trying to go over it for everyone who listening or wanting to watch and not having to do it themselves. Let me do it for you. But yes, the promo, Agunimon and Lobomon from the premium Bandai sets, and other ways to get these cards. These cards are getting hit to 1 each, and their reasoning is, although these cards were intended to strengthen hybrid decks, they can be easily digivolved into Ancient Greymon and Ancient Garurumon, rather than using gimmicks that require 2 cards, such as the BT-17 Agunimon and the BT-17 Lobomon, making it possible to steadily produce excessive speed. I like that they're using the word excessive speed here, because there are other ways to warp in the game, but those ways require usually for your opponent to have like a big Digimon out or something like that. Like, you have to be in not a good spot for a lot of those other warp cards to come into play to help you out. Whereas these cards don't require anything like that. You could be winning the game and smashing your opponent in the face and still be able to go into these guys. So I do like that they used the words excessive speed, because that's what they were. They were win faster, harder, even if you're ahead, no downside, right? Continuing on, this means that the reason for using other level 6s, such as Emperor Greymon and Manda Garurumon, is lost, and design for hybrid decks become limited. For that reason, we will be limiting each to only 1 copy. So they're saying here that these cards are too fast, too abusable, and too strong, because now no one wants to play anything else that has to do with hybrids, excluding what these cards can go into. So then that limits their design space for these cards, and we know that we are getting more hybrid support because we're getting our World Convergence set, right? So they had to limit these to 1. I'm really surprised. I could have seen them getting banned as well, but limiting to 1, now you really need to think about when you do this play in the game. Maybe now if you're choosing to go into the one that you only have 1 for the game, you're getting that 1 play off, and it is still, excessive and really, really strong, but now at least you can't do it all the time. And they really don't like that you could do this, clearly, because they want you to be able to use 2 such cards to be able to do these combos, and not just 1 getting you straight into the level 6. And that's why they, quote the BT-17 and Agunimon and Lobomons in here, because they're okay with those cards, but they're not okay with the Aguni and Lobomon promos. So that's why those got hit. I like the reasoning of these cards very much. I think that they did a good job explaining why these cards are hit. And one of the cards everyone knew would be on the list, and people have been waiting for forever out, is, yes, the BT-11 Mirage Galgamon. We all know it's hit to 1, but let's listen to what they have to say about that. Because it greatly restricts actions that can lead to comebacks from having more cards in hand, in quotation, it is a card that is difficult to deal with unless the opponent is able to remove it from play. So that's already a lot right there that they're saying, right? They like for people to always feel like they have a chance in the game of Digimon, right? So they don't mind comeback potential cards. That's why they make a lot of warp cards, like we just stated with those promos. They are okay printing warp cards, and we know this because in the new starter decks, we're getting more rookies that can warp, because that gives you a way to stay into the game, and they want people to feel like there's always hope in Digimon, because with the show and the anime, you have that hope, and that's a big part of Digimon lore and stuff like that. And they're saying that this card prohibits you really strongly from being able to, you know, come back into the game. And the way that you come back in games a lot is by having more cards in your hand. And Mirage tells you that if you add more cards to your hand, I'm taking your turn away, right? So unless you already have a card in your hand that can get rid of Mirage, you're in trouble because Mirage doesn't let you draw or search that card out. And that is why Mirage is a problem in that dynamic. He himself does not have protection in the sense that he can't be deleted, but in the sense that if you do not already have an out within your hand and without the terms of being able to add a card to your hand from your deck or from your sideline or whatever means, Mirage would keep you from doing that. So in that sense, he has that protection and you can't remove him from the field easily. I love this explanation. If it was only this, I would be kind of happy with that, but they decided to give us more. Continuing on, if the opponent is unable to deal with it, the player can easily set up a second copy of the card, continuing to limit their opponent's actions and resulting in a potentially one-sided game. So even better explanation here, just saying that if your opponent's already into a Mirage and you don't deal with the first one, now they can set up a second copy of Mirage, and then your likelihood of winning the game is even lower and lower, and it really limits your opponent from being able to play the game and resulting in potentially one-sided games, which is what they're not a fan of. They don't mind people doing crazy stuff in the game if both players get a chance to do those crazy things, but they do want hope in the game, which is what I strongly believe off of. And continuing on, they gave us a lot of explanation from this one. Also, because it is a self-contained card, its versatility means that decks that include blue lose the diversity of other available blue cards. For that reason, we will be restricting it to only one copy. So I do and don't like this explanation here. I do think they were very thorough and touched on just about everything. So since it is a self-contained card, it means that every blue deck is using this card, right? If you have blue in your color, you're using Mirage Galgamon. What I don't like that, though, is that because the Mirage is still at 1 and not banned outright, all these same decks that were playing Mirage will still continue to play the Mirage, and then you still will have to deal with it, right? So the problem of the card that they stated everything above this is still a problem because the card is still allowed. Now, granted, if you can only run one, you know, that doesn't change what they said in the first part of the text for why they hit it. So with this last part of the text, I don't like this because if you really believe that this was the case with the top, the card would have been banned outright, in my opinion, because if you can still see the one still does everything that they said that it keeps you from doing in the first part of this text. So just getting one out doesn't change the fact for your opponent that if they don't have the answer on the other side, they're in trouble and can't do anything in the game. And then even though, yes, this other part says it's self-contained, all the other decks, this statement doesn't do a lot for me because all these decks are still going to play this card. And if your opponent sees the Mirage, they probably have something else strong out with it. I do kind of wish that the Mirage would have just been banned, especially with some of their reasoning here, because it makes more sense to me that this card would... They don't want it in the game, but they're still letting you have it at 1. But we'll continue to see that if Mirage just keep popping up, which I do believe it will. At least you only have to deal with one now, right? If you're able to out one, now you got rid of it and you'll be okay. But it is still going to be included in these Galaxy decks. All these other decks, every deck's still going to run one Mirage because it's just such a good card. I like how thorough they were with the Mirage explanations, but I do think that they contradict themselves with this last part because... if they're worried about all this stuff, it doesn't change what they're also saying in the card, making it difficult to deal with. Because if they bring up the Mirage and you don't have a way to deal with it, you're stuck in that position. And that doesn't change as long as the card's allowed. Because if they see it and you can't deal with it, you lose, essentially. But we'll move on. I do like how much they gave us, but at the same time, I do think it contradicts. And that maybe the card should have just been banned based off of their reasoning here. But it's at 1. You won't have to deal with as much. Sorry if you do see it and you have to deal with it. But you're going to keep seeing it, I promise you. The card is still busted. We get to still play with it. The one card on the list is the ST9 Stingmon. I think that this is a horrible hit, but we'll go through it. This is the one I'm least happy about, why I did not give them, 100%. And it's because of this card. their reasoning for the Digimon going to 1 is as the card pool has increased, it has become possible to include general purpose cards such as powerful level 6s that can digivolve from Paildramon and other option cards, and so drawing cards using this non-once per turn inherited effect has led to an excessive increase in possibilities. So what they're saying here is that they don't have any issue with the level 6s they made or the options they made, right? They're saying that here because these cards are general purpose cards that they want you to play in the deck, but maybe they're saying they don't want you to see them very often because you're only going to run 1 or 2 copies of such cards in the deck, right? And they're saying that those cards aren't the problem, it's the card that's letting you consistently get these cards to your hand that's the problem, and I do not like that. Those cards are the problem that they're talking about, and they just didn't want to hit them, but we'll continue. Also, because it can be played for low cost, the number of cards needed for DNA Digivolution can be minimized, which is true. You can play this for 3 and say you're going to 3 anyways. It's a really easy way to get your whole DNA Digivolution shenanigans going off because you only need 3 memory to do it. Making the early game unaccessibly stable. Okay, so they're just saying that this card is too cost efficient. It makes your early game too stable because you can just play him out for 3. I do agree with all of this for sure. As a result, the role of this one card in the deck is significant, and the diversity cards used is lost. I do not agree with this statement because we've seen plenty of topping deck lists with the deck not using even a single copy of this card. Now, with that being stated, the winning deck, the top deck, definitely did use this card. But I think that goes to show that these cards that they're trying to touch on here, that they don't have an issue with, the level 6s and the option cards, are actually the problem in the deck. Because they are the cards that win you the game. This Digimon does not win you the game. No one has a problem killing or getting rid of this Digimon or anything like that. The Digimon's not winning you the game. It's the cards that he lets you get into that are winning the game. And I think that you're still going to be able to, you know, the mechanic of DNA Digivolving is inherently free draw power because you're Digivolving anyways onto the first 4. You play the other 4, you DNA Digivolve, that's another draw. You get to unsuspend, you get to swing, draw more cards from your other effects that are also drawing. I know this one isn't once per turn, but there are other ones that are not once per turn that let you draw also. I just don't agree with this card. I'm glad that they did take a shot at the deck in general, but I do wholeheartedly believe this is the wrong card to hit, and only time will tell, right? We could be all be wrong, and they could be absolutely right. This card hurts the stability of the early game of Imperial and its consistency, and I do think that it does that. I do think that it does that a little bit, but still having the tamers makes that irrelevant because the Digimon is not what makes you consistent early, it's the tamers, right? You don't care what level 4s you see. As long as you got a green and a blue, you don't care. If you can still do your plays. So I have a hard time with this one. I know I'm stuck on this for a while, but I do think it's the wrong hit. I do like some of the reasons they gave us. But at least they're making it clear that they don't have a problem with the level 6s and the option cards. Digimon is telling us they don't have a problem with those cards. They think that Digimon is a problem because it's letting you get those cards too consistent. And only time will tell. We'll see where Imperial goes from here. But I don't think that this hurts the power of the deck. I think it does hurt the consistency a little bit. But only time will tell, right? I hope to be wrong and that Imperial does take a little hit. Because we already seen it top in Worlds. And it won't be going anywhere at all now if that doesn't do a whole lot. Alright, going on to the next one, Kazuhamon from EX4. This card is really, really strong because it lets you play out the ace underneath. So I thought that the ace would be the one they hit, but they are hitting the Kazuhamon, which is fine. I think either way it helps. And that is the first part of the text that they explain right here. Combined with the BT19 Talmon Ace or option cards that accelerate Digivolution, it is possible to Digivolve into a powerful level 7 at an early stage of the game. I wonder what level 7 they're talking about here. Is Ruin Mode. We all know who they're talking about. Just say the card. Into a powerful level 7. You know what level 7 we're talking about. The Ruin Mode and the Chaosmon. Just say those cards on here. Don't be beating around the bush with us. And you don't want to put any, you know, they don't want to put any attention on Ruin Mode. That's why they're saying just level 7. But we all know it's Ruin Mode. It's Ruin Mode. You get to go into Ruin Mode really fast, really early, really easy. Also, by repeating the same action multiple times during a single turn, it can unilaterally dominate the playing field, creating a situation that many decks are unable to handle. No deck can handle it. A field full of all these ruin modes and stuff, they're absolutely right. It does make a dominant playing field that many decks are unable to handle. They should have just said that you can't handle because you can't. You can't overdo it. So they're restricting it to 1 copy. Now, we know that this does not change the deck too much. It does change the high rolly aspect of the deck, but the deck is still a deck. Talmon, Ace, Loop is still a deck because you're just running its normal line anyways, and you can still do all the same shenanigans. I think the Kazuhamon just put it really over the top, where it was just like, wow, this is insanely crazy how fast you can repeat this and do it over and over and over and over again. So it definitely does slow it down, but seeing it 1, now if you see it at the 1, your opponent's going to put you in this state anyways that they're talking about here. So this could be one of the ones where I could see them have banning the card if they're saying this, because this situation still comes up. The situation that many decks are unable to handle is still going to keep happening without this card in the game at 4 of. It doesn't matter. It's still going to happen to you. Maybe now you can't repeat it as many times, but this situation is going to happen to you when you're playing against, you know, the deck. It's still a good deck. You just run the regular Sakuyamon line stuff with it, as well as the Kazuhamon at 1, and you're going to be able to do these things. So all of us are going to be in a situation that we cannot handle, because it's still a great deck and it's still going to be super powerful. And going to the bottom of the list here, we do have a banned pair. If Mother D Reaper is included in your deck, you cannot play Shoto in your deck. Which, for me, being a kind of gimmicky player with Mother and Shotos, I have a couple of decks that ran this, so I'm sad to see this go, but I knew that it needed to happen, right? It's not healthy for the game, and we're going to see what they have to say about it. Since Mother D Reaper can be set up reliably early in the game, and Shoto being able to give it the blocker effect easily, you are able to set up strong defensive measures early in the game. Okay, it's a statement. We have determined that this combination is not good for the environment, as many decks have limited means of dealing with it, and the effect is highly reproducible because the only card required in the deck is Shoto Kozama. For that reason, we'll ban the use of these cards. I think they could have explained this a lot more. This is really not a lot to go off of. All they're saying is that this Mother Shoto combo is strong, and that they don't think it sets up a good environment for the game. There are ways to have this same kind of setup going on in other decks. Maybe not as early or as reliable, but in Shoto's Liberator Bird deck alone, if you're into the 6, you're putting your opponent in this kind of situation anyways, and depending on your lineup, you can do this with the 2/2/4 memory as well. So this combination is not good for the environment. I don't like that, because there's plenty of this same kind of combination, you having to deal with this huge big blocker on the board that is unaffected by stuff, is in the game. Multiple instances of having to deal with a big body like this. So if they're determining that this combination of this kind of setup is not good for the environment of the game, then they are contradicting themselves with all the decks that they have in the game that are set up to be that way. Magna is set up to be that way. The Shoto deck is set up to be that way. There's so many other decks that are set up to have a big body out for you to deal with like that. And if they don't think that is the environment they're trying to set up, then newsflash, they need to hit some other decks then. Yes, you can deal with those cards, and yes, you could deal with Mother in other ways, but I think this is just an easy out for them. A lot of people in the community complained about this combination. And this was an easy hit for them since it was something they were not intending. I think that I would rather them have admitted that they messed up. And then that would have been an easier, better explanation than what they've said here. Because they did, right? They didn't make Shoto have to be on certain Digimon. And they messed up with that. The devs did by not stating it had to be set up on certain Digimon, or it can't be set up on a Digi-Egg or Digi... Like, they could have proofed this card, but they didn't. They made it too generic, and now this is some of the stuff they had to deal with this combination of the Mother and Shoto. I would have rather them have just said that they didn't foresee this happening, and they messed up, and that would have been a better explanation than this. because other decks are going to give you some kind of board to deal with like this. Now, they can't do it on turn 2, but they definitely can do it on turn 3, which is one turn earlier. And no deck in the game is dealing with a board like that on turn 2 or turn 3 anyways. So, I don't know. The effect that it being highly reproducible because it only requires the one card in your deck being Shoto, and it's really 2 cards because it has to be Mother as well, means to me that then you hit Shoto to 1. I think that if this is what you mean by this, Shoto should just be at 1, and then you can't run Mother and Shoto together. But they are trying to sell us cards, right? And we have more Liberator cards coming out, so they can't do that. I definitely agree with this. I know I've made a big case about this, but I definitely agree with this. It needed to go, but I wish that they would have just admitted they made a mistake with the Shoto not being generic, and then not give me all this BS about how they don't think this combination is good for the environment, and many decks having limited means of dealing with it. Every deck has limited means to dealing with other situations, but I definitely agree with it overall. So that is their explanation. Like I said, I'll try to leave a link for this in the description of the video for everyone to check out. This was just my input and take what I thought of their explanations for it. And like I said, overall, I'm very happy with the state of the game. I'm very excited to see where Digimon goes from here from this banned and restricted list. I do think it's going to be really awesome, but I do think that we are still going to see some of these decks that were really, really strong continually to be really strong in the game. But you know, that's my opinion. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Please let me know in the description down below what y'all think about this list. What do you think about their descriptions? What do you think should have been hit? I want to know what y'all have to say. Please sound off in the description or the comments below. Leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. Peace.